Welcome to the Contrarians, where we are right and you are wrong. I'm Julio.
And I'm Alex. Here on the show, we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. For the first half of each episode, Contrarians Corner, we trash the fresh red tomatoes and praise the rotten green splotches, making our case any way we can.
The aptly titled Real Talk serves as the second half of each episode. This is where we discuss our true feelings on the movie we're covering. For more information on our podcast and to browse past episodes, you can head over to our website, wearethecontrarians.com.
From there, you can also access our Patreon and merchandise, because capitalism.
If you enjoy our attempts at comedic film discussions, we encourage you to subscribe and leave us a review on whatever podcatcher you use.
If you'd like to reach out to us directly, that's what social media is for. You can find us on most platforms as @ContrarianPrime.
You can also see what we look like if you go to youtube.com/@ContrarianPrime, and you can contact us by email at wearethecontrarians@gmail.com.
I think that covers it.
Then it's time for the podcast. And we are recording for Contrarians Corner for Some Like It Hot.
Hello and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined as always. For this particular version, would you be Joe or Jerry? I was going to say the Joe to my Jerry,
Man,
the Jerry to my Joe.
That's a good question. I don't think either of us is as sleazy as these two guys are.
I don't know. I mean, Jack Lemmon, he just likes to dance, you know?
Oh, I don't know, man. I think the first half of this movie, he is the instigator. And then at some point, arbitrarily, they just swap places. And then suddenly Tony Curtis is the horn dog. So,
oh, yeah. They're both trying to, I mean, understandably so. They're both trying to woo and wow Marilyn Monroe. Candy here. Sugar, excuse me, not candy. It's sugar cane.
Sugar cane, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Who's the better dancer? I think that you would take that one. So you would be Jack Lemmon.
I suppose so, yes. Yeah, I would still appreciate a gift, and no matter what form it came in. So, as Julio stated, the title of the film, in case you've never heard of it, Some Like It Hot, going back to the work of Billy Wilder and his work with Jack Lemmon, we're revisiting here as well. The Apartment, yeah, that got the full treatment.
Yeah, I think this is a trifecta. We did Double Indemnity, then we did The Apartment, and now we're doing Some Like It Hot. We're,
of course,
hitting all the highs.
Possibly the highest of highs, depending on who you ask. I mean, obviously, critically and financially, this movie was a sensation. But, you know, with the benefit of time, hindsight being what it is, I mean, this is regarded as like an American classic, you know?
Yeah. Men in Drag, an American classic.
I mean, it's true.
Ahead of time. This was...
In some aspects. In others, it's like, oh, man, it's sad that... This is still kind of how things are. So, Marilyn Monroe, a topic of frequent discussion here on the Contrarians, bringing her star power and sizzle to the silver screen.
That unique Marilyn Monroe quality that has been often imitated, never replicated, arguably maybe not even by her in this movie.
This based on Fanfare of Love, a 1935 French comedy film that was directed by Richard Potier, is how I assume you pronounce that. As we mentioned, Billy Wilder back behind the camera with Marilyn Monroe, Jack Lemmon, and Tony Curtis, which Julio and I had a brief discussion trying to remember if we've done anything that he's been in. It does not seem so.
No, we've constantly referenced his descendant, Brandon Curtis, but Tony Curtis is the first time that he's graced the Contrarians with his presence. And
taking us back quite a ways. As I mentioned, it's black and white. This is, of course, after color had been introduced, but most of the auteurs were still clinging to, you know, their physical media of the day, which would have been black and white filmmaking. Premiered in New York City on March 29th of 1959. That was the week my mom was born. And then moved to Los Angeles on April 8th of that same year. So just a week and a half later. Budget of less than $3 million with a box office return of close to 50. And, you know, we'll get more into the awards and some of its legacy in the second half and also over on our YouTube page. But just for context, in 1989, it was part of the first class of films that were entered into the National Film Registry.
I guess Billy Wilder figure he had done everything he needed to do. So he would just coast after. Actually, no, he didn't coast after this. The timeline, because I needed to figure out for my own peace of mind. It goes like this, Alex. As far as like stuff of his that we've covered in the Contrarians, Double Indemnity, 1944. Sunset Boulevard, I did a QVR for it a long time ago, 1950. Some Like It Hot, we're doing now 1959, and then the next year, The Apartment, 1960. At what point do you think Billy Wilder figured, maybe I should start doing color? I don't know. I mean, the last time that we had this conversation about his
he was
career,
making movies into the late 70s, I believe, so I'd imagine so.
You think at some point the studio won? The studio told him, listen, I don't care how many movies you have in the National Registry.
It's over. Time to move on. All right, Julio. So it was a movie preserved for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. But in addition to that, it stands high atop the Rotten Tomatoes scoring system with a 95% fresh, overwhelmingly, so certified fresh even, and a 94% popcorn meter. The critical consensus based off 73 reviews, and the popcorn meter with over 50,000 reviews submitted, or I guess just thumbs up. I don't know. Anyway, which quotes did you pull for us today?
Did he get fresh?
Of course not. As a matter of fact, it was just the other way around.
All right, fresh quotes from the Rotten Tomatoes website. You know, it may be, is it certified fresh? I didn't see that.
Yes, I just checked. It's got the logo and everything.
Okay, because there aren't that many. There's like not even 100. So I guess when the classics get a pass. Maybe they lower the standards for those. But we're going to start with Jet Staff from Jet Magazine. And I'm going to read it in what I'm assuming was the style at the time of publishing. Probably one of the year's best prescriptions for banishing the blues is a rollicking new motion picture entitled Some Like It Hot.
Outstanding.
I mean, obviously, Rotten Tomatoes didn't exist back in 1959, so this is somebody either writing a review as if they were, I don't know, broadcasting it from the past, or somebody just found this old review from Jet Magazine and put it up on Rotten Tomatoes, but it is a red tomato. Joshua Rothkopf from Time Out says, the great American comedy, in parentheses, if you discount the Marx Brothers. Someday, Alex, we might tackle the Marx Brothers and the Contrarians, but we have tackled other comedy giants. So do you take umbrage to this statement, this qualifier, the great American comedy?
That would be more of like, what about Bob or Dumb and Dumber? That's the great American comedy. But
no Apatow? I mean, we have...
I was going to say Road Trip, but I recently talked about how much I love that movie too much. I mean, that's fair. There's a lot of historians and, just based on my knowledge of the film industry, especially, this would have been right at the tail end of what is considered the golden age of Hollywood. And so what else? Yeah, besides Marx Brothers, maybe something Buster Keaton, something Charlie Chaplin, maybe. But yeah,
I mean, I guess because he was British and then he moved to America, then he was exiled. So maybe they wouldn't count him as like a great American filmmaker. If you just put it down to American, who do you have? Marty with the King of Comedy.
Yeah, a real bucket of chuckles that movie is. Yeah, or you could. If we wanted to play off recency bias, we could probably find something from Bogdanovich to throw in.
There you go. P-Bog. Man, P-Bog would have loved this movie. Would have loved to direct this movie and have it bomb somehow.
He still would have had the same cast and everything, and it would have made like $2 million.
Yes. Well, he wouldn't have been able to keep himself from falling for Marilyn Monroe. And
well, duh. Yeah.
I mean, can't relate, but still. Wes Anderson. The great American modern comedy.
Moving on.
All right. Next, Mark Byrne from DVDjournal.com says, Wilder gave his audience credit for being as smart as he was, and boy, they don't make him like that anymore. But they oughta. They oughta, Alex.
They oughta.
Yeah. Is this a smart movie? I think I'm going to spend the rest of Contrarians Corner arguing that point, because I think it's pretty fucking dumb.
Jack Lemmon, maybe. But when I saw Tony Curtis in his ensemble, I was like, come on.
What are you trying to fool?
That is the hilarity of, like, you know, spoiler alert, when he reveals that he's not who he says he was. All he does is just take off the wig, and they're like, oh.
I'm going to close with just listen. Frank J. Avella from Edge Media Network says, brimming with gay subtext, especially in the somewhat daring Lemmon/Brown courtship scenes. Some Like It Hot also contains quite a bit of homoerotic tension between Curtis and Lemmon. In addition, the gal camaraderie is quite lesbian-esque. I didn't know lesbian-esque was a word. I quite like it, but of course a dude would write this. Where it's like, oh, we see a bunch of women having fun in a train, and instantly,
I was just about to say, yeah.
Lesbians.
Pillow fight.
Yeah. Did you feel sexual tension between Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis?
Not that I can speak to. You know, there are some kind of, taboo is such a tried word, but there's certain aspects of this that are, like, you know, there are the type of shit, if you saw it on TV today, you would hear, like, people like, oh, what is this? But it's so thinking about, like, 1959 specifically, the way the movie ends is just kind of like, oh wow. And so yeah, there's aspects of it that are kind of daring, I would say, but I was not expecting there to be some, like, ending where Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon rode off in the sunset together.
Yeah, it never occurred to me that there was anything there but friendship, toxic friendship even, but no romantic interest. No, Jack Lemmon,
because they are, like, they're two bros that are, like, you know, they had to dress up, disguise themselves to get away from getting killed by the mob. And, like, along the way, it's like if you and I, or, like, you know, one of your buddies did the same thing, they're just, like, giving each other shit about how bad they look and stuff like that. It's not like they're, like, longing into each other's eyes and, you know, Homer and the pig in the Simpsons movie. Maybe we should kiss to break the tension.
Anyway, those were the fresh quotes. Before we go to the Contrarians Corner, Alex, we should shout out that this is number 87 in the Jordan Mann's Top 100 Movies list.
He is the reason for the season.
The reason for the season. Sandwiched between number 86, Boys in the Hood, and number 88, The Florida Project. Another Sean Baker joint. Recent Academy Award winner, Sean Baker.
Man, what a triple feature that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I chose this, by the way. Julio told me to pick from his list, and I had the Criterion of this film still in the shrink wrap, so I was like, good reason to get it off the shelf and crack it open. So
yeah, I don't have the Criterion for Some Like It Hot, so it was it's on Tubi, but also it's on Hoopla. So I was like, how about I skip the commercials? I just watch it on Hoopla.
Nice.
So yay, libraries, and it played beginning to end wonderfully. I am curious how much, because, you know, Jordan, he seems to really take these lists seriously. So I wonder how much he agonized putting Wilder ahead of Baker, you know, just by one spot, and then Singleton ahead of Wilder, just one spot. And then, just in case anybody's curious, 85 is the Iron Giant, which I haven't seen. But
I'm just imagining he gets, like, the movies mixed up. And, you know, when describing him, he's like, yeah, and then at the end of Some Like It Hot, it's really sad. You think that Jack Lemmon's going to, like, get away, but then he gets gunned down in the street. And Marilyn Monroe's like, what's his name in the movie? Jerry, Daphne, you know, yells after him.
But let's go to Contrarians Corner.
Let's get down to it.
How can you be so selfish? We owe back rent. We're in for $89 to Moe's Delicatessen. 3 Chinese lawyers are suing us because our check bounced at the laundry. We borrowed money from every girl in the line.
You're right.
In Prohibition era Chicago, Dateline, Prohibition era Chicago. Joe is a jazz saxophone player and an irresponsible, impulsive gambler and ladies' man. Jerry, his anxious friend, we've established at this point Jack Lemmon is going to be the anxious dude, you know? If he cared, he could have, you know, and he could have directed his own movies and just portrayed the Woody Allen role and everything. A bit better, though, because he's not Jack Lemmon almost has that flop sweat going at times in this movie, and the apartment. Well, obviously the apartment because he's like sick for a lot of that movie. But yeah, Joe is very laissez-faire, and Jerry, I can see myself in. I'm just like, you don't think anything through. We need plans, man, plans.
But also, the way the movie plays it, Tony Curtis is the stud, right?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was just kind of letting my familiarity with Jack Lemmon blind me to his sex appeal. I was like watching him, I was like, no, I think Tony Curtis is supposed to be the attractive one. And Jack Lemmon is just a weirdo.
Confirmed. He's a double bass player. They work in a speakeasy owned by a local mafia boss, Spats Colombo. Tipped off by an informant, Toothpick Charlie, the police raid the joint. Joe and Jerry escape, but later accidentally witness Spats and his henchmen gunning down Toothpick and his gang in revenge, an incident inspired by the St. Valentine's Day massacre. Spats and his gang see them as they flee, broke, terrified, and desperate to leave Chicago. Joe and Jerry disguise themselves as women named Josephine and Daphne so they can join Sweet Sue and her society syncopators. What does this mean, Julio?
Is that just the name of the band? Like whole?
Yeah, I guess I don't know if there's an actual meaning to it. It's a noun, a musician who plays syncopated jazz music.
Okay. So it's a type of jazz.
Usually in a dance band. They call themselves the Dixie Syncopators. So the Society Syncopators in this case. Took me a minute to get that word right. It's an all-female band headed, and I still probably didn't get it right, an all-female band headed by train to Miami. On the train, Joe and Jerry befriend Sugar Cane, the band's vocalist and ukulele player, even though she plays it once, I think, and then
she carries it around.
Yeah, and then like halfway through the movie, they have to remind you she plays the ukulele because she goes, "Where's my ukulele?"
Yeah.
But the Marilyn Monroe musical numbers in the second half of the movie are just designed to make dudes in 1959 in the theater go boy. So
just when they're starting to question the logic of the movie, like, who would do this? I'm like, oh, you're right. Yes, they're doing it for her. Okay, makes sense.
Exactly. That at no point did I question their motivation in this movie. I'll give them that. It went from not getting gunned down by the mob to attempting to court Marilyn Monroe. So I get it, man. Any type of prohibition material, because I am a Simpsons loyalist to the golden age, I will think of Rex Banner. And so I was just immediately, when they burst in saying this was a raid, I just could hear him telling Mo, "Open up, Curly. This is a raid." And then Mo goes, "Curly?" That's how he responds to it.
Did you laugh? I mean, I know you like this. Obviously, you're familiar with the prohibition environment, what have you. But did you find it funny how scandalous this whole thing is? And it's really like it's just some dudes partying. I mean, there's no nudity. Nobody seems to be doing drugs. Just some pretty girls dancing on stage, and dudes are having whiskey. The cops like break down the doors and come in like guns blazing. It seems like an overreaction.
Funny to think about. Yeah, because the way the movie starts is like a chase with the mob. They're driving a hearse, and the police are like smart to what they're doing. And we find out that the coffin's just full of booze and shit. But yeah, they start just shooting and not ask questions later. And knowing what we know and how pervasive and just to say readily available would be, as describing the universe as fairly large, the influx of alcohol that we have now and how much of the culture it is funny to think about a time where a cop would have been like, "They've got a beer," and just start opening fire.
Yeah, I think that was a fight that authorities most definitely lost. Those poor cops, if they had a window into the future and they saw how people party today, they would just throw their badge on the ground and walk away.
Julio, the legacy of this movie typically doesn't include people's leading talking point being the whole reason they have to flee is because they witness a mob execution. They line these guys up in like a firing squad and just gun them down. And the one guy lives, and that's how they can sneak away, because they turn their attention for a second because they hear some rustling. So then Spats just walks over and shoots him in the head again. And then, 2 seconds later, the audience in 1959 is slapping their knee, laughing about, "Oh, they're going to dress as gals. What a romp." and risk of spoiling kind of the ending, which I'll go ahead and do, this isn't the only mob execution we see in this film.
No, nor the most graphic. So you're right. Like, the legacy of Something Like It Hot is it's a movie where Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis dress in drag, and nobody really mentions the brutality that they witnessed and how it comes back to haunt them in the third act. Instead, it's just, oh yeah, that's right. And then they meet with Marilyn Monroe, and then they kind of, there's a love triangle going. You know, nobody's perfect and so on. But the number of lives that are lost in these 2 hours is usually swept under the rug when people are recounting this so-called masterpiece. It's not just the violence, Alex said. There's also a couple of instances where there's just these very callous passing references to suicide. Did you catch the one where they're talking about how, these people that are desperate to find a bass player and a sax player that are women, and they're going down the list of people and they can't find anybody, right? Like, she moved to New York, she married this guy, whatever. And then there's one, he goes, oh yeah, she slashed her wrists. It's like, oh my God, what happened? This was a comedy.
That one always had a screw loose.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way we get to this is they're borrowing the secretary's car, which Tony Curtis, he first threatens to, choke her or wring her neck, and then he just tries to manipulate her with his charm so he can borrow her car.
And it works.
Peak bum behavior when you let him borrow her car. He was just like a step away from, can you DoorDash some food for us before we leave?
Did you catch Jack Lemmon breaking the fourth wall?
Yes, it's in my notes. What does he say? Something like, oh, isn't this just terrific? Something like that.
Yeah. He was just so embarrassed by his friend's behavior.
I was kind of like, is this going to become a reoccurring bit throughout the movie? Kind of like in The Apartment when he looked into the camera and said, this is the apartment.
Want some gas?
Yeah, about 40 cents worth, please.
Put it on Miss Weinmeier's bill?
Yeah, why not? And while you're at it, fill it up.
That instance where Tony Curtis treats this woman like dirt, and then she still lets him take the car, that kind of sets you up for the way that the movie portrays women for the rest of the story, right? They're obsessed with men, and they let men manipulate them even when they know better. And that is exemplified in the Marilyn Monroe character specifically, but it's also just throughout the entire movie. Even if you could say, oh, well, it's all in good fun, this is just a comedy. The fact that you don't really get like a single female character that gets the best out of these two guys, or any guys in the movie, that's pretty telling.
It also shows how we're representing women here when we see our main characters in drag as they're going off to join this band, and we get the first on-screen appearance of Marilyn Monroe here.
Dude.
And there's this extended shot of her walking, and then we're like, the POV is we're Jack Lemmon or Tony Curtis just watching her ass as she runs along to get onto the train before it disembarks. That's like a shot you would see in like an 80s or 90s sex comedy, and something I did not remember. It's almost off-putting because, we know what we know about Marilyn Monroe. It's like, oh, come on, man. We didn't need that.
You would also see it in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. Alex, my note says they gave her the Jessica Biel treatment.
They did. Nowhere near as beautifully lit and artistically shot, though.
Well, yeah, it's black and white. I mean, there's only so much you can do.
Similarly, though, Marilyn's dress here is working overtime, much like Jessica Biel's jeans were in that movie. So a salute to all the great fabrics of the world out there.
The costume design.
And all the shapely women of the universe. We got love for y'all. Jack Lemmon, I believe, makes some extremely 1959 like metaphor for explaining a woman with a nice ass of like, what is he says it must have like a motor. Yeah, there's something about Jell-O, and also how she must have like mechanics in her, and he's like mimicking like a robot walking.
This is what passed for charm in the 50s.
Yeah.
Don't say, like you say, sometimes it didn't used to always be better, Alex. No. I think that we've evolved a little bit. But back then, Billy Wilder could just get away with it and just point at everybody around him. I was like, hey, what? It's not just me.
When they actually meet her on the train, though, we learn that she's not like a raging alcoholic, but she likes a good drink to take the edge off. And Sweet Sue, the woman who heads up the band here, is basically forbade alcohol and men from the group. And so another very 1959 way of describing attractive woman is when Marilyn Monroe leaves the scene, Jack Lemmon asks Tony Curtis, "Did you see the shape of that liquor cabinet?"
Awful. Awful behavior.
But everyone just buys and accepts right away that they're here to fill in for this band, and they kind of win over the hearts of, at least Jack Lemmon does, the hearts of the rest of the gals, because he's like the wild child of the bunch,
yeah.
and they think he knows how to throw a party in his little train cart.
You can only get away with one thing, right? One big ask, and I think that this is where the movie uses it. Like, the big ask is that you have to, as the audience, you have to believe that these two dudes that have absolutely no practice pretending to be women, suddenly they just dress in drag and are able to fool the very conservative people from the 1950s. You know, they don't even raise an eyebrow. They just come in and they're like, okay, so you're Daphne and you're Josephine, and that's it. Okay, well, I'm okay with buying that. But that means that you can't ask me to buy any more bullshit. Like, that's it. You just spent your credits, right? And the problem with the movie is that it keeps asking you to buy bullshit as it keeps going. Another problem, speaking of Jack Lemmon, is that, like I mentioned earlier, his character flip-flops a lot. And so at the beginning of the movie, before the whole thing with the mob bosses, he's the one that wants to pretend to be a woman to get money, right? Because they're broke and they know the only job available is the job at this women's orchestra. So he's saying, let's do it. And Tony Curtis says no. But then Tony Curtis flips it. And he's like, they see the murder and he's like, okay, we need to escape. So I get why Tony Curtis would say, let's do it. Because, you know, he wants to save his life. But now Jack Lemmon is the one who's like, I don't know. I don't want to do it. It's like, he was going to do it for money, but he's not going to do it. He's fighting it for, to save his life. That doesn't make sense. And then he's happy about it again when they're in the train. He's like, okay, now I'm surrounded by women. I like it. I'm a kid in the candy shop. But then jumping ahead a little bit, as soon as they get to Florida, he's like, I don't like it anymore. I was like, make up your mind, dude.
Joe and Jerry become obsessed with Sugar and compete for her affections while maintaining their disguises. Sugar confides in Josephine that she has sworn off male saxophone players who have taken advantage of her in the past. She hopes to find a gentle, bespectacled millionaire in Florida. Josephine and Daphne become close friends with Sugar during a late-night party on the train and struggle to remember that flirting with her would compromise their cover. That's, what is it? Partying up a 7. That's what all the girls say. And, it's... The shots of it are very funny because it looks like a vegetable crisper that's just like overflowing, and there's just like arms and legs hanging out all these different spots, and then like Jack Lemmon's head pokes through, and he's trying to get Tony Curtis's attention. It starts off innocently enough where he's just gonna have a drink with Marilyn Monroe, but when he's attempting to get this bottle of whiskey, he falls out of his the upper bunk there that he's on, the top bunk, and I think even before she asks, how are you? She says, how's the bottle? And
she is an alcoholic, Alex.
These gals were ready to party, though. They immediately put together fucking a charcuterie board and all this shit. And Jack Lemmon then hits the e-brake, which I didn't realize everyone had access to on trains back in those days. Certainly could do that today. Every influencer in the world would slam on the brake just to get, views on Instagram.
Yep.
Hey, easy on the balloons.
13 girls in the berth is bad luck. 12 of you have to get out.
Pass me the peanut butter. Anyone for salami?
I thought of a zombie movie. The classic shot of like the one human that gets overpowered by the zombies and then they pile in on the uninfected. That's what I thought when Jack Lemmon is just trying to fight off all these women piling on him. Why is he so upset about it? A couple scenes earlier, he could barely hide his erection because he was surrounded by beautiful women that were giving him a lot of looks.
Yeah, he changes his tune real quick.
Yeah, once they start touching him, he's like, I don't know, I don't like it. He was getting ready to just reveal his secret to Marilyn Monroe.
And also they brush over real quick that I think he has like the flu or some shit, and these folks should not be around him. That's how COVID starts, man.
That was his thing. Every Billy Wilder movie he was in, he always gets the flu.
It's part of the contract,
No, that was the one idea he always brought. He's like, hey, what if my character gets sick?
And Billy, after a while, was just like, Jack Lemmon's like, hey, I have a suggestion. And Billy goes, your character gets sick? And he just kind of like, closes his eyes and nods his head.
So Tony Curtis, he's a sax player. Sax players get a really bad rep from this movie. Just
no
the
joke.
way that Marilyn Monroe describes him. Is this her Oscar clip when she's talking to Tony Curtis and just goes on this monologue about how badly she's been treated by all these men? She's being very plucky about it. She's being very Marilyn Monroe. She's not really downtrodden. She's just saying, well, this is how it is. And that's why no more. I'm going to Florida to marry a millionaire. Can you see that at the Academy Awards?
Yeah, either that or the scene on the phone later where she starts crying.
Oh, yeah, the more than one single tear.
Or when she has the line that there'll always be a Shell station on every corner. I could see that being like what was played.
Yeah. Well, here she sets up the love triangle. She puts the hook out, and Tony Curtis bites, and that kind of takes the movie into a different direction, because I thought that we were watching a chase movie, right? These guys are running away from the mob, disguising themselves as women, and that's going to be the conflict that, they can't blow their cover. But then from here on, once you establish that both Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis are attracted to Marilyn Monroe, the mob angle is dropped for over an hour, right? It just doesn't come back until the very end of the movie.
You almost forget about it. You're like, oh no, they won't die.
Yeah, that's a bummer, because I felt that the mob part was more exciting, right? People are dying. there's actual mobsters. See, this is just
the first 10 minutes of this movie definitely promise something that the other hour and 50 minutes do not deliver.
Nope.
Because even when Spatz gets gunned down at the end, we feel like, Peter Bogdanovich was a good one to name. We feel like we're in this screwball comedy of, wrong place, wrong time. Now we got to run and disguise ourselves as an orderly. Oh, now, put a coverall on and we'll put you in this wheelchair. Now we're going to run this way.
Big cake.
Yeah. Who's going to come out? Oh, a guy with a machine gun. All right, never mind. Arriving in Miami, Joe woos Sugar by posing as Oil Air Shell Oil Jr. and affecting a Cary Grant-esque accent while feigning indifference to her. The aging multi-divorcee Osgood Felding III, an actual millionaire, persistently pursues Daphne. That starts immediately when they arrive at this hotel here as Daphne trips, and he helps put her shoe back on and says something like, I love a woman with a shapely ankle. It's something very descriptive. Feet guys need to be, not to kink shame, but that's something to keep an eye out for.
They were a little more open about it in the late 50s.
Yes, exactly.
So is this guy a predator, Alex? Is Billy Wilder asking us to find a sexual predator cute?
I don't know about predator, Julio, but I would say he needs to learn like no means no, because the declines and outright refusals from Daphne just really intensify his, she's playing hard to get, so I need to keep being very persistent. But
then the movie proves him right. So it feels like Billy Wilder is encouraging this behavior, right?
You hear what I just said? This is a movie of half ideas. He started, he was like, this is going to be a mob thriller. And then he started with this character. We're going to teach the audience something. And then, he probably got drunk and forgot about it and just went back to making the movie the next day.
Yeah. He was like, what would be funny? If he actually wore Jack Lemmon down.
That's the real comedy. And then Jack Lemmon's trapped and he can't get out, even at the end.
Billy Wilder slapping his knee and women around the world horrified.
After Osgood invites Daphne to dinner on his yacht, Joe convinces Jerry to keep Osgood occupied on shore so that Junior can be alone with Sugar on Osgood's yacht and pass it off as his own. On the yacht, Junior tells Sugar that psychological trauma from the death of a former lover has left him impotent, but that he would immediately marry anyone who could cure him. Sugar tries to arouse him with considerable success. Meanwhile, Daphne and Osgood dance the tango until dawn. Been there.
So which of these couples had sex? Do they both have sex?
I don't at any point think I thought that Osgood and Jack Lemmon did the deed. But I don't know if either of them did. Because I think when he gets to the moment, like anyone would have realistically with Marilyn Monroe at that point in time, it's just like, oh, God, this is so intimidating. I don't think I can do this. Give me another drink.
Yeah. How is it that she doesn't recognize him? That's another big ask, right? That the movie wants you to believe that she gets up close to this junior character and doesn't realize that he looks just like Josephine from the orchestra.
Yeah, you would think, but also alcohol and, a yacht of that size could make you forget about or just willfully ignore a lot of things. So I get where she's coming from.
Okay, that's even more damning now of the Marilyn Monroe character.
Dude, she says she just wants a millionaire.
Yeah. She's willing to ignore the fact that this man that she is trying to seduce might be also posing as a woman in the orchestra that she works at.
We did skip over the scene when they're on the beach, and this is where he sets this up where he's Shell Oil Jr. and Jack Lemmon's in the water with Marilyn Monroe, and she basically is just like, damn, you've been working out? Like, look how broad your shoulders are, and tells him, and I'm jealous that you have no chest. What does she say? Clothes must fit you better than they do me.
Yeah, they hang better.
Yeah, there you go. Which would have been a pretty risque implication, visual to give the audience for the time. During that, though, I forgot to call out when Daphne and Sugar and all the other gals are running out of the water back onto the beach. Like, you need to go back and watch it unless you caught it. There's just like a woman who's not part of the band. I don't know if it's an extra or just wouldn't get out of the shot. She's like laying face down in the sand, motionless. And it appears as though she's dead, and they just kept it in the movie, Vic Morrow style. So I need to look up and see what the, if there is any behind the scenes story to that. Cause I rewound it because I thought it was maybe just an extra, someone on the beach who was rolling over to suntan. She's just as face down in the sand, motionless. So we need to get to the bottom of this.
I mean, the movie eventually reveals that there's just as many mobsters in Florida as there were in Chicago. So,
well, of course,
poisoned, maybe.
What happened? I'm engaged. Congratulations. Who's the lucky girl? I am.
When Joe and Jerry get back to the hotel, Jerry announces that Osgood has proposed marriage to Daphne and that he has accepted, anticipating a divorce and cash settlement when this ruse is revealed. Joe convinces Jerry that he cannot marry Osgood. I would joke that, proposals happened a lot quicker in those days, but there's still crazy people that get engaged after 2 weeks of dating or 2 nights of knowing each other like in this. Whereas me, I date someone for 5 years and I'm like, well, hold on now. Don't think this is getting serious.
Well, the money, I think the money aspect really changes the way that you live your life.
Touche.
Just getting engaged is just one more thing that you do. It's like you don't have to really worry about consequences. This is where Tony Curtis goes full MAGA, where he just tells Jack Lemmon categorically, a guy cannot marry another guy. Boom. Huge political statement from Billy Wilder in 1959. He took a stance. It made me shiver. The closest, I guess, Tony Curtis has to a heel turn in this movie, or an acknowledged heel turn. And then the only way that they come around to it is like, oh, but we can actually maybe benefit from this.
Yeah, my note says, men marrying men, crazy.
It will never happen. Not on Billy Wilder's watch. How do you feel about this love story between Jack Lemmon and Osgood? Because it's not just about the money. The way that the movie portrays it, it seems like Jack Lemmon is finally having fun with someone.
Mm-hmm.
So is that, where did that come from?
It is very strange the way it's played because it starts off with this, what kind of woman do you think I am? And it's played for comedic effect. And then it becomes this thing of almost like a plot of a thriller where it's like, I figured out a way to take advantage of this old man and rob him of all of his money. And then by the end, it's like, what? Are they actually in love? Is this going to happen now?
Apparently.
Yeah, it's a bit all over the place.
Well, for that matter, the Tony Curtis story, his romancing of Marilyn Monroe also is that he's making it up as he goes along. Because what is the plan there? He can't perpetually fool her into thinking that he's a millionaire, right? He lucked out.
He's going to try to Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yes, but I mean, it was just so coincidental, just the perfect storm of circumstances where he could take over Osgood's yacht for one night, right? And that's never going to happen again, or at least not easily. So what's the point? Is he really doing all this just to get laid? Because there's no future.
Well,
there's no way that this can be I mean, I know it's Marilyn Monroe and we would all do it, but still, it feels like he's not really thinking about, what happens a day later or 2 days later.
They should mainly be concerning themselves with like new identities, witness relocation, that type of shit. Is it explained why they didn't go to the cops immediately? Other than just fear of them getting picked off?
I don't remember. I think he said something like, they'll kill us before we even get to the cops.
Okay. So we have the one line of dialogue. And while we're talking about Tony Curtis here, we did forget to mention he says the name of the movie. He says the titular line where he asks Marilyn Monroe what kind of music she plays, and she says, jazz, hot. And he goes, well, I guess some like it hot.
He should have looked at the camera then.
He would have to pause before hot. Well, some like it hot. That's how that was like Nathan Lane delivering that line. That's how he would have done that.
Yeah, actually, the camera's on them, but then after he says the titular line, the camera pans all the way to Jack Lemmon on the other side of the beach, and then he looks at the camera.
Well, isn't that terrific? The hotel hosts a conference for the Friends of Italian Opera Society, a front for a national mafia meeting presided over by Little Bonaparte. Spatz and his men arrive and soon recognize Joe and Jerry, still in disguise, as the witnesses they have been looking for. Fearing for their lives, Joe and Jerry realize they must quit the band and leave the hotel. Joe conceals his deception from Sugar by telling her over the telephone that Junior must marry a woman of his father's choosing and move to Venezuela. Sugar becomes, this is where I mentioned, this is probably Marilyn Monroe's Oscar scene. She becomes distressed and heartbroken. Joe and Jerry evade Spatz's men by hiding under a table at the syndicate banquet where Little Bonaparte has Spatz and his gang gunned down. Doesn't even mention that it's by a dude with a machine gun who pops out of a cake, like we mentioned a little bit earlier. Joe and Jerry are spotted and they flee through the hotel. Joe, still dressed as Josephine, sees Sugar on stage singing a lament to lost love. Joe runs on stage and kisses her. Sugar then realizes Josephine and Junior are the same person. Finkel is Einhorn. Kaiser Soze, all that shit.
Did you notice that nobody in the band reacts until the cut, right? Tony Curtis goes and kisses her. You can see some of the women playing, and they're playing even though the lead singer is making out with another woman in front of them, but they're just kind of like playing their music. So they wait until you cut from that shot to the shot of the woman that runs the orchestra, and then she screams, and that's when everybody reacts. So they're almost like they were open-minded until somebody pointed out what was happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Subconsciously, they were okay with two women kissing in front of them.
When the mob shows up here, Joe and Jerry had been on this cross-country train ride and hoodwinked, bamboozled dozens and dozens of folks here.
Yes.
The mob sees them, and the leader Spatz immediately goes, hey, those aren't dames. Those are the guys we've been looking for. He immediately sees through it.
Yes. What is the implication? Smarter in Chicago than in Florida? Or just mobsters are smarter than the average person?
I guess that's the point. That's the reason he's leading the Chicago Mafia, is because he's got a keen eye for detail, I suppose.
He can spot a man in drag a mile away.
It is awesome how they learn the mob's there, though, is Jack Lemmon takes out his compact to kind of reapply his makeup, and he sees through the reflection of it that the Mafia is there, and they immediately go into panic mode.
It's pretty silly, though, that he never takes the heels off. He pulls
no.
a Jurassic World.
But can't you just see audiences just rip-roaring laughing at this when they're trying to run away and sliding across the floor and stuff?
He's running in heels.
He's a man.
I don't mean to be forward, but ain't I had the pleasure of meeting you two broads before?
Oh, no. You must be thinking of two other broads.
The one bit that recap skipped is that Tony Curtis learns the meaning of Christmas and he gives away the necklace that they were going to use to start a new life.
Yes, which kind of frustrated me because it wasn't his to give away. At the same time, you think about it, it's like, well, Jack Lemmon got it under kind of nefarious circumstances, but then it's again, fuck it. No, it was given to him. He gets to dictate what happens to it.
He was going to be nice enough to share it with Tony Curtis so they could both survive and start a new life. But instead, it gets sent to Marilyn Monroe, and she doesn't really seem to care much for it, which feels like a waste.
Same with the flowers.
Yeah, she's like, that's nice. You broke my heart, Tony Curtis. Oh, the thing with the mobsters, this hit, this is just insane. Like, at this point, the movie is no longer attached to reality as we know it, right? Because this is a hotel. Like, can you imagine this happening anywhere? I know it's Florida, but still, like, the idea that these mobsters would hold like a convention and then stage a hit, like murder like 10, 15 people in the ballroom or wherever it is that they were, not even quietly. It's not like they slit their throats or something. It was just like they killed them with machine guns.
Dude, yeah. What do you think what they tell the other guests?
Yeah.
It's a snare drum.
And then, unsurprisingly, a cop wanders in right after. Like, what happened here?
Well, that's the chief from Chicago that leads the raid at the beginning of the movie. And you would think he would be more like, what the fuck? But he just walks in and kind of surveys it. He's like, seems like something went awry here.
He goes, I'll get you next time.
Jerry persuades Osgood to take Daphne and Josephine away on his yacht. Sugar runs from the stage at the end of her song and jumps aboard Osgood's boat just as leaving the dock. Joe confesses the truth to Sugar and tells her that she deserves better, but Sugar wants him anyway, realizing he is the first man to genuinely care for her. When she is running down like the dock, she says, wait for Sugar. Meanwhile, Jerry tries to get out of his engagement by listing reasons why Daphne and Osgood cannot marry, none of which bother Osgood. Exasperated, Jerry rips off his wig and says, I'm a man, in his normal voice. Still smiling, Osgood replies, well, nobody's perfect, confounding Jerry and leaving him speechless. And audiences across the nation stood up with thunderous applause. Found the notion of it so funny.
They still have to figure out, like, how does this make sense, right?
Dude, oh man, can you imagine the churches, like when this movie really started picking up momentum across the country? I hope you like it hot because that's where you're going. Hell.
I just love the idea that there's like a bunch of conservative people laughing, and then they get to that final punchline, they laugh really hard, and then like their smiles freeze, and they're like, wait a second.
It's like the end of, is it Bruno, where he goes to that MMA event and like tricks people into thinking he's straight, and then he starts making out with that dude in the cage.
Really got on my nerves that Marilyn Monroe switched to third person narrative when she's running. It's like, wait for Sugar. She hadn't done it the entire movie. Suddenly she turns to Dr. Doom and she starts referring to herself in the third person. And then the movie just completely betrays her. Actually, it's not a betrayal because it's consistent with how the movie has portrayed her character the entire time. I guess the movie fails to give her a redemption, right? Because you would think that the arc of this character would be that she learns to love herself. Mm-hmm. And after listing how badly she's been treated by men and acknowledging that that's a problem she has, that she can say no to toxic relationships, to people that treat her like shit, the movie rewards her by having her hook up with the dude that spent half the movie lying to her, manipulating her, and who at best tried to calm his own guilt by giving her flowers and an expensive necklace. But that's it. Like there's no reason for her to jump on that boat or for us to see it as a happy ending. It's a happy ending for Tony Curtis, but for Marilyn Monroe, it's just, she did it again. She fell for a bad sax player.
It's true that if she thinks this is the only man who's been like genuine enough for her to be with, it's like, man, Sugar. You know, at one point she said she's from Sandusky, Ohio, and that's before Cedar Point was there. So I know there wasn't really much to do. I just don't think she met enough guys because he's not a millionaire. Do they even address that?
I think he mentions it when he's trying to list all the reasons why she shouldn't be with him. which, I mean, it's clear that she doesn't care, which is a bummer. You can draw a straight line between Marilyn Monroe in this movie and her character in, what was the movie we did on Patreon?
Oh, The Misfits.
The Misfits. Yeah, you can just draw a straight line between the character that she plays here and the character in The Misfits, where she's just gone through, I don't know, 20 more sax players and she's just done. she's just ready to have one more attempt with Red Butler.
That's right. I've dated every sax player on the East Coast. I'm done with this.
Now it's time for a cowboy.
One of the more iconic endings to a movie I think you're ever going to come across in this one, with some of the more celebrated performances, and for the purposes of what we're doing here, a film that ranks in the top 100 of one of the friends of the podcast. So obviously something that comes along with baggage has a negative connotation, but weight is the word I would use to describe it. An interesting Contrarians Corner to traverse, to say the least. But Julio, are you ready to move this along to real talk?
Let's go to real talk.